I thought we could discuss for a moment the naked truth about nakedness. There's a lot of theories about nakedness, and a lot of the portrayal of it in some circles is entirely innocent. There's ways that nakedness is considered completely in a professional context, other times in artistic content, and sometimes it's kind of relegated to a point where it's part of human existence and there should be no big deal about it. Well, if that's the case, I don't understand why there's $1 billion industry of pornography, which largely plays upon nakedness and other stuff, of course. But as you look at entertainment, as you look at the internet, the using of nakedness to promote or to sell products or services is very widespread. Now, it's strange that it has such an appeal, but we can get a hint of why if we go way back to the Garden of Eden. Now, I know it sounds strange, and some people don't want to believe there was a real Garden of Eden, but one thing, whether you want to believe it or not, the early chapters of Genesis give us a picture. And if you believe that God is giving us a picture in the early chapters of Genesis, well, then there's something in there about nakedness that makes it perhaps the factor that we see today in a worldwide fascination. It says at the end of chapter 2 of Genesis that Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed, which is an interesting statement, but it does mean that there was no big deal about nakedness in man's original state. And because I do believe the law of God is written in man's heart, I think one part of us wants to believe that it's really no big deal, that if we were really in the right environment, nakedness does not present a problem at all. On the other hand, after Adam and Eve had disobeyed God, it says immediately they knew they were naked. Now, obviously, we're not concerned about pornography or immorality at this point, but there was this sense of being uncovered, and that being uncovered was not good. So much so that they tried to immediately sew together a covering, it says through fig leaves, and didn't work very well. And when God showed up, they hid because they couldn't stand appropriately before God when they had disobeyed him, and realizing now that their bodies that had been created by God could now be used for selfish purposes. And I think that's where the root of nakedness in its bad sense comes in, is that awareness that it can be used for selfish purposes, and also that awareness that there is pleasure in sin. They had sinned, and although they were embarrassed and ashamed of their sin, there apparently was some pleasure in that sin. Matter of fact, in Hebrews chapter 11, it says that Moses chose to suffer hardship with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasure of sin for a season. And I think it's been pretty well established that for most people, particularly for men, seeing pictures or examples, exhibitions of nakedness tends to give them pleasure. Now, we also know that pleasure doesn't last. Or once you saw your first pornographic picture, or once you discovered what nakedness of the human body was all about, you learned it, you're done, you wouldn't need any more. But the tendency is, I need more, I need more, I need more. I had a friend once who said, well, I think with pornography, I think with men it's just a matter of curiosity. I said, well, I can think of another name for it. It's called lust, a desire to be pleased by what you see, as we talked about before, the desires of the eyes, desires of the flesh, pride of life, these things that come out as the root of sinful behavior. And so if it was a simple thing with no lust or involved or direct sin involved, it would seem that once seen, you've got it and that's it. But no, with things like nakedness and other things that give pleasure in a selfish pursuit, these things just don't last. The pleasure doesn't last. And so they seek again and again and again. And that's why the Bible does give us a little bit of solution to change our focus from the pursuing of pleasure for selfish purposes to pursuing what pleases God for unselfish purposes. Now, the amazing thing about that, you then end up with a pleasure or a joy that lasts and doesn't fade away. So I think it's a good deal. So nakedness has become something that has been twisted into a selfish pursuit. And we need to be aware that we don't need to pursue things selfishly. We can pursue God and not get entangled in selfish and unprofitable journeys.